It's the Cannon Sports Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by former Major League reliever and the founder of Beimel Elite Athletics, Joe Beimel. Welcome in, everybody, to the Cannon Sports Podcast, coming to you today from Beimel Elite Athletics in Torrance, California. I'm Phil George, and with me today is a 13-year Major League veteran and the founder, owner of Beimel Elite Athletics, Mr. Joe Beimel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Excited to have you here. I want to start off, give you the floor, introduce yourself, introduce the facility here, and tell everybody what you have going on here.
Yeah, my name's Joe Beimel. I played 13 years in the big leagues, 21 years professionally. Retired for the first time in 2017, and me and my business partner, Brent Dean, we started Beimel Elite Athletics, saw a real need for a place for athletes to come, be better baseball players, give them avenues to get better, not only with just throwing and different mechanical cues, but workouts and strength training and things like that as well. Went well here for a couple years, and we expanded to El Paso, Texas. That was another town where I think they have like 50 or 60 high schools in the town, and they didn't have like one Division I commit for baseball. So we saw a real need there and decided to, take our business there and see what we could do to help the athletes.
And what have been the results since then?
We've got a lot of guys that have gone to college there. We have a couple pro guys there, but most of our pro guys train here. Just a better weather here, and nicer area. You have the beach. You have the beach in El Paso too, but just no water.
You guys have a phrase here at Beimel Elite Athletics: mass equals gas. What does that mean? We have a lot of guys that come in and they're, they might be 130, 140 pounds. And one of our big things is they just need to get bigger, get stronger, and you'll see better results. Sometimes getting stronger fixes a lot of issues when you're playing any sport, but especially with baseball. And, some of the guys don't really need to work on their mechanics. That's kind of like I feel like one of those quick fixes where everybody wants to, hey, can you give me one or two things that I can work on mechanically? And a lot of times that's not the case. It's just you need to get bigger, you need to get stronger. And, sometimes that's not the case. Like for myself, if I get too big, when I get over like 220 pounds, I don't move very well. So I actually don't throw harder the bigger I get. So there is kind of a limit to it as well. Well, and that general mindset of getting stronger, building muscle, building mass has kind of been a departure from the thinking when you were coming up through pro ball. How has that mindset kind of changed over the years?
It's changed a lot. I remember being in the big leagues and working out in the off season down at PNC Park in Pittsburgh. I was living there in the winters, and I remember doing like some curls or something with like 40-pound weights, and the strength coach was like doing this, like looking at me. I'm just like, what's going on? He's like, that's too heavy. You can't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. But baseball players aren't supposed to be big. And I was just like, what? So, that was 2001, 2002. And now you see these guys that are just giants, big, strong dudes. And I think that's why velocity is up in the game. Guys are starting to hit more home runs again. And I think you're just seeing bigger, stronger athletes now.
Yeah, average velocity 20 years ago in 2002 was below 90. Now, last year, it was up over 93, and it's fairly common to see guys hitting 101, 102, even 103. We just saw Hunter Green set a new major league record. I think, 39 pitches over 100 miles an hour in a start against the Dodgers a couple weeks ago. What has been the big reason for the explosion in velocity?
I think just the way guys are training. I think they have a better understanding. Nutrition plays a part. Recovery plays a part. I think, back when I first came up, I was I threw like 88 to 91 and would top out at 94, 95, maybe hit a 96 once in a while. And I was considered like a hard thrower back then. And now, unless you're 97 plus, you're, you might not get a job. That's how hard guys are throwing. But I really think it's just the way guys are training, the way they understand their bodies, and the way they move.
What are some of the muscles that do contribute to increased velocity, and how do you go about training them?
It depends on the guy. Some guys are just genetically gifted and can throw hard without doing anything. I was never that guy, so I always had to work on it. I wouldn't say there's a specific muscle that happens with, but just being strong overall body. Legs are obviously a big part of it. If you don't have strong legs, you're going to struggle a little bit. And then recently, for pitchers, I found, or any throwers, just making sure you have a balanced shoulder. So your internal rotation strength, your external rotation strength are all strong, but then also balanced. You don't want one to be stronger than the other. You want them to be pretty much the same.
You deal a lot with amateur players, some youth players, and there are guidelines put in place in youth baseball to kind of protect young pitchers' arms. How do you train safely as a youth ball player to achieve those sorts of goals?
I think as a youth player, just go out and have fun. The youth guys that we have, we try to stay away from a lot of mechanical work and things like that. It's basically just throw hard, swing hard, get a little workout in, get your body moving. But I feel most young athletes move well, and you don't want to take away their athleticism by overcoaching them and getting them thinking all the time when they're on the mound or when they're at the plate. You want them to just let their natural athleticism take over. And then once they get a little older, you can start to work with them on stuff like that. But a lot of the stuff we do mechanically, younger players don't even have the body awareness to be able to recognize what you're even telling them. So like I said, I have a 7-year-old son that's playing T-ball, and I don't give him any instruction. It's just if we go in the cage and hit off the tee or whatever, we're just trying to set PRs and swing and hit the ball as hard as you can. And usually that works out, and it's a lot more fun for him as well.
Is he right-handed or left-handed?
He's right-handed. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. My wife and I are both left-handed, and we just had a baby at the end of February. So
congratulations.
I think he could possibly be left-handed, but we'll see.
Is there a limit, you think, to how fast the human arm can throw a baseball? I mean, we got Ben Joyce down at the University of Tennessee. He's routinely hitting 104. I don't think that's something that's been done on any sort of frequent basis. What is the limit?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I think it's different for everybody. I think as long as you're increasing your strength, you'll see, like I talked about earlier with internal, external rotation strength, scaption strength. I think if you're able to sustain that, then that minimizes your chance of injury. I think what happens is, guys throw hard, the muscles become weak, maybe they add a little range of motion, and then the arm can't handle it, the joint can't sustain that, and it becomes unstable, and that's when the injuries happen. But I think as long as you can keep those muscles strong throughout the course of a season or the course of a career, I think that really minimizes the chance of an injury. But as far as like the limits, I mean, I don't know. I know the limit for me is not 105 miles an hour at 45 years old, but I think we'll keep seeing these increases as long as guys are training and getting stronger.
I want to go ahead and get into some of the specific players that you've worked with, and one that particularly caught my eye was Kelsey Whitmore, just signed this year with the Staten Island Ferry Hawks in the Atlantic League, and some of the guys on her team. I mean, she's got Julio Teheran on the same pitching staff. That's a two-time All-Star. Tell us a little bit about her and what your experience has been working with her.
Well, she started training with us a couple years ago. I think she played for the Team USA women's team, baseball team, and just wanted to come in and learn a little bit about pitching and stuff like that. Well, she ended up training with us kind of full time. She was at, I think, Cal State Fullerton playing softball as well. So she was always kind of like a pinch runner. Maybe I think she hit like high 100s or low 200s. And she came in here, worked her butt off, went for her senior season, and I think she was like the Big West like player of the year or something that year, and just put up like crazy numbers, hit close to 400, hit like 12 home runs. So I think for her, just seeing what the strength training did for her was exciting. And then since she's graduated, she hasn't been able to get in here as much as she would like. So I worked with her remotely this past off season. Just worked on some mechanical things, different pitches, different training methods. And the goal for her was always to play professional baseball. And she had a couple opportunities that came up, in different leagues. And she was thinking about possibly like coaching in the MLB draft league with a possible chance for her to play in that, like in the second half. But it wasn't a guarantee. And then this opportunity came up for her in the Atlantic League. And I was like, that's outstanding. So she obviously jumped on that. And, she's awesome to talk to. We've had a lot of conversations, a lot of long conversations throughout this off season, just about her training and about what to expect in pro ball and how to go about her business there. But I'm excited to see what she does. It's a great time to be a female athlete, especially in baseball. There are a lot of opportunities out there, and I'm pumped for her to be able to jump on this one.
Yeah, and you mentioned she plays for Team USA. USA Women's Baseball was instituted in 2004. They've won 5 gold medals in international competitions since. She's been a part of 3 of them. It really is a growing sport that not a lot of people know about. It's not in the Olympics yet, but how big is women's baseball getting, and where do you see it headed?
Hopefully it grows quite a bit. I think there are a lot of women out there that want to play baseball, and to give them that platform to be able to actually do it is outstanding. Most women, they have to play softball. There's really, in the past, there really hasn't been anything for women that love baseball and want to do that. So, and softball's great, but it's not baseball. If you love the game of baseball and you want to play, you should be able to. So, I don't know if we'll see a woman in Major League Baseball. Could happen. Could be Kelsey. We'll see. But I think just having that avenue to be able to play the game they love is pretty outstanding.
If we do see a woman ultimately play in the major leagues, do you think there's a specific archetype of player that will be most likely to have the most success?
I really don't know. We had a girl who trained with us a couple of years ago, Louisa Gauchi. She's from Australia, and I think she's playing junior college up around Seattle. But, looking at her stats, she's walked like a ton because she's, smaller and nobody can throw strikes to her. So maybe, that's how the first woman gets into Major League Baseball is they can just get on base and get walked and then fly around the bases. But like I said, we'll see what happens and see where things take us.
And she's certainly not the only player that you've helped move on to the next level. You've got guys like Bubby Rossman just signed with the Phillies after 6 years in indie ball, whether it's him or whether it's Kelsey or anybody. Just how rewarding is it for you and the staff here to really have a part in helping these people achieve their dreams?
Well, it's awesome. When we first started, I was like, I just want to work with like pro guys, big league guys, like high level college players. And one of our first clients we had was a kid named JT. He didn't have a lot of skills. Like he was throwing the ball as hard as he could, and it was like 55 miles an hour. And I remember like looking at my business partner and just being like, oh man, what are we going to do with this guy? You know, like I don't know how to help him. But he continued with the program. He showed up every day. He worked like super hard, and he ended up getting a scholarship to play at an NAIA school up in Northern California. And I think that was probably one of the most rewarding things, was just watching how a kid that just wasn't given a lot of opportunities, didn't have like a great, didn't have like the natural skill set to play baseball, but just through his hard work and like doing our program, he was able to kind of make a dream come true of his. So those, I feel like those are the best ones. And then obviously the guys who we've had a few recently that have come in and they played in college maybe a little bit, but now they're getting an opportunity even in indie ball that they didn't think they would have had, 2 or 3 years ago. So it's always fun to see these guys have success. But what I tell them and what I tell everybody is we can give you the program and we can give you the resources and help you as much as we can, but ultimately it's the athlete who deserves all the credit, because they're the ones coming in every single day. They're the ones working hard, putting in that effort. And it's just nice to be a part of that.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really doing great things and making an impact over here. I want to get into your professional playing career. Like we said, 13-year career, got into almost 700 games in your career, worth about 7 wins above replacement. Now, I actually want to stop right there. That's the stat that I pegged. You probably know your Baseball Reference page inside and out. What stat do you point to kind of signify your performance?
I would just say the longevity, and then also the games. I was able to pitch in a lot of games. Pitched in 83 games in 2007, which I was really proud of, just because that's more than half of the games that you play in a season, so I feel like a real player, not like a starter where you're only pitching every 5 days. As a reliever, you're ready every single day. You have to have that mindset.
Did you just call starting pitchers not real players?
They're pitchers. They're starting pitchers, but you're not as a starting pitcher or even a pitcher, you're not an everyday player. But I feel the closest you can get to that is being a reliever that pitches a lot and they're in every game. But yeah, they're definitely real players, but they're kind of teetering on that line. They're still just starting pitchers.
Man, I don't want to ask you your opinion on punters.
Oh, that's the greatest job in sports. Though I would love to be a punter.
And coming up through the minors, and even after you got that first call up, you had to fight for roster spots. You had to go back and forth between the majors and minors. We have viewers who are going to be going through that for the first times themselves. We've got the MLB draft coming up in June. What is that grind in the minors like, and what advice do you have for some of our viewers who are about to get their first taste of that?
Yeah, I got drafted and came up pretty quickly. I played a half season 1998. Geez, forget that was in the 1900s. 1998. Played a half season in Erie, Pennsylvania. Played the next year in Hickory, and then in 2000 I split time between High A and Double A. And then going in, I got put on the 40-man roster that off season, and going into spring training, I remember telling Lloyd McClendon, who was the manager at the time, that my goal was to make his team out of spring training, and I'd only had like 10 games pitched in Double A. I'd never played in Triple A, and he was kind of looking at me like, what is this kid talking about? But I think it kind of stood out to him when I went into spring training. I pitched well and had a pretty good spring, and there were like a couple injuries, so it gave me an opportunity to pitch more and pitch well, and ended up making the team out of spring training. And then I do that and I think, all right, well, I'm going to spend my whole career in Pittsburgh. I'm going to pitch, I'm going to beat Jesse Orozco's record. I'm going to do all these things. And then, after my third year, I get released in spring training by the Pirates, my fourth year with them. And then it's like, oh, wait a second, what's going on? And then you realize that's not the way things go all the time. So you can either just kind of crumble up and feel bad about yourself, or try and get better, try and do some different things, try and learn some stuff. And that's kind of what happened through the rest of my career. I was like, well, if I want to play for a long time, I got to make some adjustments. I've got to, what I did at 21 isn't working at 25. So I've got to start, trying to do some different workouts, maybe some different body alignment stuff. And then kept that mindset throughout my career and was able to pitch till 40. And then that's how all of this evolved as well with Beimel Elite Athletics, because I had done all of these different training methods and kind of was fortunate enough to put it all together along with, my business partner. He played at UCLA and then played in the minor leagues for a long time. So we just had this experience where if we can do this and just kind of give it to the kids where they don't have to do that, that experimenting like we did. But it was definitely a fun ride those first few years, and I learned a ton. And I was fortunate enough where I'm still playing, technically not signed yet, but where I'm, I feel like those 21 seasons that I was able to play in pro ball have just flown by, and it's a long career, but you realize like how fast it goes. So, that's kind of my, when I talk to younger players, I tell them like, enjoy it, because whether you play 1 year or you play 20 years, that career is going to go by super quick, and you might as well enjoy it when you can. And also I got released 7 times in my career. If I would have given up after the first time I got released, then we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about this. And, so enjoy it. And if things don't go well, learn from it and keep grinding and keep trying to get better.
Sounds like what you're saying is a big part of it is coachability and adaptability. And those are two big things that are key in a player's ability to get to the major leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being able to adjust. Everything's not always going to be perfect. Everything's not going to be the way you envisioned it or the way you want it, but you got to keep a positive attitude and not dwell on the bad things, and just keep trying to get better.
It would not be hyperbole to say that you, in your career, were the greatest of all time at getting Barry Bonds out.
Yeah, that's something that I take a lot of pride in, because I grew up a Pirate fan. So I got to watch him play a lot when I was a kid. And then playing against him in the big leagues was just kind of pretty crazy and surreal. I got to face, Tony Gwynn and Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr., all these guys that I grew up watching and had posters on my wall. And now I'm like trying to get them out. So the way I approached him, because he was chasing home run records at the time, was just like, you know what, I respect the guy and respect his career, so I'm just going to go at him and throw him strikes. And that's kind of all I did, was just mixed up my pitches, went at him. And I think he was a little shocked at the time, because it was a time where everybody was trying to pitch around him or just trying to nibble on the corner. And then I came in and just started pumping strikes and going right at him.
Yeah, I mean, dude has more intentional walks than some major league franchises over their entire existences.
Absolutely. So it was always just fun, and I felt like I was able to kind of turn it up another notch when he stepped in the box.
Yeah, you faced him 19 times in your career, held him to 1 for 16 lifetime. And amazingly enough, one of the only other people in the world with a similar track record of success against him was your pitching coach at the time, Rick Honeycutt.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he held him in his career to a batting average of .083, and you held him to .063.
Oh, yeah.
So you got Rick by a little bit,
Nice.
but that's not something you guys ever talked about?
No, he never mentioned that to me. Rick was a very humble guy, so he would never say anything about himself or what he did as a pitcher. And that's kind of rare especially at the big league level. Usually your coaches are telling you how great they were and how they did everything like perfectly. And then you look at their baseball card and you're like, that doesn't sound right. I can see these numbers.
I figure that if I had those numbers against, the greatest hitter of all time, I'd be bragging about it to everybody.
Yeah, he never said anything, and he was not like that at all. Like, he was one of the few coaches that I've had that was just he was all about the players and helping the players get better, and never talked about himself ever.
I want to put you on the spot. Barry Bonds, Hall of Famer?
I don't know. I mean, his numbers are fantastic. They speak for themselves. I don't, I know all the other stuff that goes on with it. I think it's just a case where he was just not nice to the media and not nice to people. And I think that came back to kind of bite him in the butt. But yeah, I mean, with his numbers, they're ridiculous. So it's one of those things where if you keep one out, you got to keep everyone out. And I'm not so sure they've done that. I think there are some guys that have gotten in that have used some performance enhancing drugs. So, at this point, he's the greatest. I feel like he's the greatest player that's ever played the game. And and the only reason I say that is because I've done so well against him. So.
Yeah, and I've certainly had an evolution on that myself, regardless of what he did do, what he didn't do. I don't see how you can tell the story of baseball history without including him in it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of those guys that had great careers, and one of the funny stories about that is I remember starting, I think it was 2002 against the A's, and I threw like a 2-0 pitch to Miguel Tejada about like that high off the ground, and he went out on 1 foot and just crushed it to center field for a home run. And I remember standing on the mound and going, man, can I even pitch in this league? Like, I don't know if I can't get somebody out with that pitch on a 2-0 count, like how am I ever going to get anyone out in this league? So it was just, and then, they started testing years later, and all of a sudden my sinker down and away started getting guys out. And,
yeah, funny how that works, right?
Yeah. So, I was in that era of baseball, and it was really hard to be a pitcher. And there were pitchers that were taking the stuff too as well. But for myself, like, it was just something that never crossed my mind to even attempt to do. So, it's just, I saw what it was like then and then what it was like after, and it was way easier to get guys out after.
Another thing I want to get into is the bobblehead that you got of yourself in 2008. It was part of the Dodgers had a fan vote to select which player that they wanted to receive a bobblehead of. I think Russell Martin was the previous year's winner. But the reason I want to get into that is the way that you ended up being the winner was after a wildly successful YouTube campaign. And that was really before the advent of social media and its explosion. You want to tell us how that all came to be?
Yeah, definitely. There was, what was it? It was like a blog called Dodger Blues. It was like a satire type.
I remember them.
Yeah, it was like, they had really funny stuff on there. And at the time, there was a guy in West Virginia making videos about me and stuff like that. And one of my buddies had brought it to my attention that he was making like this video called The Legend of Joe Beimel. So my buddy's like, hey, I want to make The Legend of Joe Beimel too, and I want you to like be in it. So we go to his house, go in his basement, and he starts kind of doing the same rant that the other guy was doing. And then I come out at the end, I kind of clap my hands and pump my fist. And so the blog Dodger Blues like saw the video, and they were freaking out. They loved it. So then I was like kind of one of their favorites. And when they had the fan voted bobblehead, a bunch of them got together and they all started voting. And I think they were voting like a ton of times, because back then it wasn't like it is now where you can only vote like 10 or 15 times or whatever it is. You could just sit in front of your computer all day and just keep voting. And then I think like my parents were just like voting on the computer as well all the time. And I ended up winning.
And I remember they came to me and they're like, "Oh, you ended up like winning the fan bobblehead, but we're not going to give it to you." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?"
They weren't going to give it to you at first?
No.
Who were they going to give it
to? Brad Penny, because he was like second, but they're like, "No, there's just too many votes." Like all these people were voting like multiple times. I'm like, "So what?" Like there was no restriction on that. So then I think some of the people from like Dodger Blues started calling the organization and like got mad, and then I ended up getting a bobblehead. So, it was one of those things that I never expected. I never expected to have a bobblehead of myself. That was always for, the superstars and stuff like that, especially in LA. But it was a fun experience, a cool experience. My parents got to come out for it. And I still have people come up to me and like, "Hey, if I bring a bobblehead in the gym, can you sign it or whatever?" And I actually don't even have a bobblehead of myself. I had like a bunch of boxes when I got them. My parents gave them away. I gave them away. So I got to like get on eBay or something and see if I can get one for myself. I think we have one out here, but it's like discolored because it's been in the sun for so long and the face is like green on it or something. So I definitely got to see if someone's got one on eBay.
And you look at the landscape today, and YouTube and the rest of the digital platforms and social media have really taken off when it comes to personal athlete branding. How important is that as a tool in today's landscape? I
think it's super huge. We've done a really bad job here of it. I'll be like working with a kid, and a lot of it is just we're just too busy where, it's the last thing that I think of, but I'll be like helping a kid throw and he'll set a PR or hit 90 or whatever. And I'll be like, "Oh man, I didn't even get video of that to like put on social media or whatever." So it's something we have to get better with. I've talked to my business partner about it too. I'm just starting to put out more content and maybe get a YouTube channel. And I've just seen, with a lot of the guys like Eric Sim, when we were talking earlier, he went from training up in Canada and is in just like this brick building where he's trying to throw 95 to now he's putting out all this different content. I've done some things with him.
He's got a glove deal.
He's got a glove deal. People are sending him bats. He's just bought like a brand new Jeep Cherokee, by having a YouTube channel. So it's definitely something that we've got to do a better job of. And, you can definitely promote your brand very easily these days with that.
You hadn't pitched an affiliated ball since 2016, and then you attempted a comeback with the Padres last year. What led to you to make that decision?
Well, last off season or whatever, I was just trying to do some new things like for recovery. I was training differently. I was just working on some mechanical things, just a whole bunch of stuff where I started doing like ice baths every morning and breath work, and then doing like red light therapy just for my own health reasons. Wanted to stay healthy, want to live a long time, have a good life. And then, a lot of the mechanical stuff, I would stand in front of like the radar gun and just toss a little bit. And then I'd work on some things like my front arm or back leg or front leg, whatever it was. And just seeing to help our guys possibly come up with some different cues for them to get better. And I would throw, and then all of a sudden I'd see like, "Oh, wow, that I jumped up 3 miles an hour on that throw." So then took that in. We had like a little fall league last year because a lot of the kids weren't playing in college because of COVID. So they needed guys to throw. And I was like, "Oh, I'll just start throwing off the mound a little bit and face these guys, give them some at-bats." And the first time I threw, I was, I hit like 90. I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's pretty crazy," because I hadn't been throwing at all, like at a high intensity. And then, started doing some different training methods, started working on like some speed lifts and things like that. And then after facing guys for a couple of weeks, I was getting really close to like 95 miles an hour. And I was just like, what is happening right now? And I was doing some different training, like arm care stuff. There's an app called the Arm Care app where I had been in contact with their owner while they were developing it, and they wanted me to try it out. And I, got my shoulder really strong, got it really balanced. And it was all this like perfect storm of all these different things to where, I started throwing harder at 44 than I had thrown at 34, at any point in my 30s.
Well, and that's something that's extremely rare. I think
Yeah.
most players, once they hit senior year of high school, a little bit into college, the velocity's not going to increase that much. But
Yeah.
in your case, getting that significant of a bump at age 44, how much of that is a testament to really the program that you guys have here?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. That's why we do it. And I always say, if we're doing the same stuff in 5 years that we were doing 5 years ago and we haven't changed, then we're not doing a very good job as coaches. So I'm always trying to experiment with stuff, try and find new recovery methods. And then, the side effect of that was that it worked on me. So at one point, I remember hitting 95 a couple times, facing some hitters, and I was just like, man, I kind of got to play this year, don't I? And it was never like when I retired, I was like done. I didn't miss playing. It wasn't like, oh man, I wish I could still play. So when this happened, I was just like, well, if I'm throwing 95 right now, I've got to at least see what I can do with it. So I was able to go, last year, sign with the Padres, threw for them. And the plan was go to Arizona for like 2 weeks. So I went down there, started getting ready, back into baseball shape. I hadn't been in a clubhouse in such a long time that when I walked in, I was like, oh, okay, this feels normal. This feels natural. I kind of jumped right back in my playing routine. And then went to AA. They wanted me to go there to basically get ready. So I went there, pitched really well. And then originally the plan was for me to, that does that all the time. Originally the plan was for me to, once I was ready in AA, I would get moved up to AAA to get in the bubble, because Major League Baseball had the bubble last year between the big leagues and AAA, and a lot of different rules when you were in those leagues and different, protocols and stuff like that. So I went up to AAA, and from my understanding was I was just going to be there for a couple games and then get called up, because they told me that, they weren't signing me just to like play in the minor leagues. So went there, pitched well a couple times, didn't get called up, and, obviously was disappointed, but at the same time, it was such a fun experience because I was 44 years old and I had zero pressure on myself. I didn't, if I didn't pitch well, it was like, that's all right. Where in the past, if I didn't pitch well, I was mad or, didn't handle it as well as I probably could have. But last year I was all about having fun, and that's what ended up happening.
Right, and even though you didn't make it all the way to the major leagues, like you said, you did pitch well. 3.86 ERA across both levels of the minors in 35 innings. You had a strikeout to walk ratio well above your career major league average. So with all that considered, and if you do ultimately make it back to the major leagues, you will be only one of just 10 players over the age of 45 to pitch in MLB in the last 20 years. So all of that said, where does your comeback bid stand right now?
Well, right now, talked earlier. I had a baby boy, my wife and I, at the end of February. So I was training to play this year, going into like spring training, and then the lockout happened. So obviously I didn't want to sign. I knew I was going to have to sign a minor league deal, but I didn't want to sign if there was no possibility to play in the big league. So I knew if I signed a minor league deal, I'd be obligated to play. And then once the lockout ended, we had the baby, and I kind of didn't want to leave, didn't want to sign with somebody right away once that happened. But now I've been kind of dialing it in. I'm actually going to throw to hitters tomorrow, kind of see where I'm at with a hitter in the box and just give it a shot. If somebody wants to sign me, then, I'm more than open to going and playing again and seeing if I can get back to the big leagues. That would be the only reason I would do it, is to have that opportunity. But, like I said earlier, there's no pressure. I don't feel like I have to play. I would like to play. I think it would be fun. And if someone gives me that opportunity, I'll go for it.
I want to get into some general baseball talk, and I want to start off with analytics. Ooh, spooky word. Yeah, it's definitely a controversial issue in both fan circles and front offices. The pros seems to work. Yeah. Teams that lean into it have a lot of success. Some of the cons, more traditional fans miss seeing some of the elements of the game that have been removed. Nobody really throws complete game shutouts anymore. Nobody really plays small ball anymore. And then a lot of other people just simply don't understand it. So zoom out, 30,000 foot view. What are analytics?
I think the whole analytic thing has obviously changed the game. I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse. I think for myself, I was always a guy who never really adhered to any of the different statistics and things like that. When I played, if you look at like my career ERA versus like my FIP, which is supposed to be, over the course of how long my career is, they should be very similar, and they're not. So I was just kind of an exception to the rule of some of the things that they're doing. I always pitched to contact, try to get quick outs early in the count, not throw a lot of pitches. And I think that's why I was successful and able to throw in a lot of games, because I wasn't out there throwing, trying to strike everyone out and walking everybody. And then, throwing 30 pitches every outing. There were times where I'd throw 3 or 4 pitches or, get out of there pretty quickly. So once 2016 came along, and I thought I had a pretty decent year in 2015, but I wasn't getting anybody to sign me. I was like, well, I have to make some changes and have to start to try and accept some of these things and see if I can get better at it. And, over the course of the last few years, it actually helped me. Last year, I was able to have, the Rapsodo and the TrackMan and get all of this data on myself and see where my pitches are lining up and how I can change those. And, you get the Edgertronic camera and the high speed, and you see how the ball is being released from your hands. And you're like, no, that can't be right. That's not how the ball's coming. I would just think like, it doesn't feel like that. But then you see it on these like high def, like super slow-mo cameras, and you're like, oh, wow, that's how it's coming off my finger. So I've got to change that. So for me, I was able to like increase my vertical break on my fastball, which was pretty huge. So not only throwing harder, but I was able to come up with new pitches and kind of tailor those into what I wanted them to be, and just keep working on them and have all of this data available that I could do that. So I think it's a benefit for players if they really kind of dive into it. And I know there are a lot of players who, they can get like in their head about it, and, it really affects their performance. But if you understand it and, mentally you're strong enough to be able to go in there and see where you're not so great, I think it can be a huge benefit for players. And then all of the other stuff, I understand, like there's the 3 true outcomes now, right? So there's home runs, walks, and strikeouts, they say, are the only thing that like hitters or players can control.
Yeah, I think Adam Dunn is often described as the quintessential 3 true outcome hitter.
Yes, absolutely. So that's kind of made the game a slow game, which baseball always has been, but it's made it kind of even slower to where you go to a game or you watch a game and nothing really happens. There's a lot of strikeouts, there's walks, you hit home runs, but then all the stuff in between is kind of isn't happening as much. So I think that's where a lot of people are losing interest. But again, I don't know of how many people are losing interest because it's, baseball is a $10 billion industry. So I don't know where all these people that hate the game are going because they're still spending money on it. But yeah, it's definitely can have its, like you talked about, can have its pros, can have its cons. And I think the organizations that really dive into it and commit to it are usually having success. And you're seeing a lot of hybrid teams as well because they realize not everybody is a robot. And you do have these guys who bring value to a team, maybe not just on the field, but how they are in the clubhouse and, what kind of human beings they are.
You talked about the entertainment factor in the game, partially brought on by the rise of analytics. That is something that MLB has been actively working on. There's been a lot of rule changes and just general discussion about pace of play, marketability, the entertainment factor. Overall, what would you say the state of MLB is in terms of an entertainment product?
I mean, I definitely think they need to make some changes for the long haul. I think the game's doing well right now. I think with the lockout, that could have really been a negative thing if that would have drug on and maybe canceled the season or canceled some games. Fans probably weren't going to have a great reaction to that. But I'm all for things changing. I know everybody loves, there are a lot of people who love the game the way it is and they don't want to see any changes. And I understand that as well. Like if the game would have just stayed the same, I'd be cool with that. But, you've just kind of got to adjust to there's a younger generation that's going to be, the game's going to be thriving on for years to come. So if you start losing young fans and they don't want to watch baseball or don't want to play baseball, that's obviously going to be an issue. So if there's a way to market it towards those guys, then I think MLB's got to do it. I don't know about pitch clocks and all that stuff. I don't think that works. I've been in the minor leagues enough to watch it, and it's just, there's a pitch clock, but if it gets down to 1, you just step off and then step back on, and then it resets. So
how about the 3-batter rule? Because that's something that if it was implemented when you were pitching in the bigs, that would have had a significant impact on your career.
Yeah, definitely. There were years where I was like a lefty specialist where I'd come and face one guy, and it all depended on the manager because there were other years where I, threw more full innings and stuff like that. But yeah, that would affect. I think that still affects a lot of relievers, just because you can't come in and get that one out. And there's still ways around that as well. Like if it's at the end of an inning, there's 2 outs, and I've seen that happen where guys will just come in and get one batter. And I actually had an instance last year in AAA where I came in to get one batter. They wanted to send me back out. So if just facing one batter, because I ended the inning, I could come out of the game. But if I went back out, I would have to face 2 more batters. So it was like just a weird rule, where it's like, oh, so I don't have to face 3 unless I go back out to pitch. So it just, I think a lot of the rules need a little refining and maybe a little better explanation sometimes.
Well, and ironically, one of the things that has really drawn a lot of young fans in has nothing to do with rule changes at all, and that's the emergence of guys like Tim Anderson, Fernando Tatis, Ronald Acuna, these young, energetic, exciting ball players, and that was just something that happened organically. So do you think the answer is more so just fostering a culture where guys like that can thrive rather than putting your finger on the scale and actually implementing hard rule changes?
Yeah, just making the game seem more fun, I think, always is a benefit. When you're watching games and guys are smiling and they're hitting a home run and they're enjoying it, I think that really resonates with the younger kids. The game that I grew up with, and when I came up to the big leagues, it was basically you're stone-faced all the time. You never pimp a home run. You never stare down anybody when you strike them out. And I still have a lot of that in me, but I don't get mad at people who aren't like that. I think the
the whole point is to enjoy yourself and have fun playing the game. And if you can do that and it resonates with fans, then that's the way it should go.
What's the most emotion you ever showed in any one moment?
I might have like done a little half-assed fist pump. I remember when I was with the Dodgers, we had clinched a playoff spot and celebrated like the night before the season ended. So then the next day we had a day game in San Francisco, and at that point I had like a three something ERA going into the last inning or the last game. And I was like, you know what, I can handle like having over a 3, but I'd really like a chance to pitch today and like try and get under a 3. So they ended up putting me in with the lead at the end of the game, and I got the save. I think it was my first career save back in 2006, and I think I went like that.
Well, that stuff matters when it comes time for, arbitration and free agency.
Absolutely. And it's just nice to be able to say like, oh, I had a ERA of under a 3, for a couple times in my career, but that was one of them.
Two-way players. Shohei Ohtani is obviously a huge name right now, and we haven't really seen anything like him since Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
Do you think that players like him will be more commonplace, even if not at the MVP caliber level as him, or will it be another 100 years until we see a guy like that?
I don't know. I think it's giving players more. I think he provides like a ton of value, obviously, to an organization. So I think that that in itself is pretty huge, because I think teams will allow that to happen more. Back before, like that wasn't even a thing. You were either a pitcher or a hitter. There were some guys who would go from pitching to hitting, but they never like were doing both. And then, even myself, I've hit 300 in the big leagues before, so that could have been me, but no, I was all singles, just all single hitter. But I think it opens up the door for sure. But I don't know how. I know how hard it is to do one thing, especially at that level. So I can't imagine how many people are going to be able to do what he does. It's just, it's something we've never seen before, and I just think people take it for granted because, that you play little league or you play high school and you do both. But when you get to that level, it's just tough to duplicate.
Do you have any two-way guys that you train over here?
Yeah, we have a lot of those guys, but they're more high school guys or even some college guys. But usually once you get to college, you either pick one or the other. We have a couple guys training with us in El Paso that are trying to do both, and they do both pretty well, but you also have to sacrifice time when you could be working on pitching. You have to like squeeze in your hitting or vice versa. So it makes it a little more hard.
Well, I want to end on this note. This is something that I like to ask baseball people, just, fun thought exercise, and speculate on really where the game is headed in the next major evolution of the sport. I have a theory. I think that the way that we're headed is purely positionless pitching staffs. I think we'll get to a point, maybe not in the next 3 to 5 years, but maybe 10, 15. You're not going to see starters. You're not going to see relievers. You're going to see pure matchups, innings 1 through 9. What do you think of that? And what do you think is the next big evolution of the sport?
I think we're kind of in the middle of it right now. I think you'll see a lot more things with umpires and eliminating human error as far as having, whether you're safe or out, not being called by a person. Same thing with strikes and balls. I think it's just a matter of time before that gets taken away, and they're going to let TrackMan and all these different pitch tracking things make the decisions on what a ball and what a strike is. Some people like that, some people don't. We do it in here already. We have been for years where we don't have an umpire. We just let the
pitch tracking device if we're facing hitters, calls if it's a ball or a strike, and then nobody can complain about it. You know, it's not an objective thing. It's like matter of fact. And I like the fact that the old game, you could, if you were hitting your spots, you could start moving the ball off the plate a little bit. You'd still get that strike call, but obviously I'm a pitcher. Hitters don't like that. But also that, I think that's why the pace of play is slower. There aren't a lot of strikes called. Umpires are scared to like miss a call now. They're not going to call more strikes. They're not going to give that ball off. So now, you know, hitters are starting to work the count a little more. It's adding time to the game. There's a lot more commercials in between innings. So, you know, you see all these things with pitch clocks and stuff happening in the minor leagues. Like none of that matters until it works in the big leagues because there are commercials. So there have been times where I've had the ball on the mound ready to pitch and the umpire says, oh no, you got to wait like 12 more seconds because we're in a commercial. So, you know, if I could just get on that, but also they're not going to, the owners aren't going to give up that money. The players don't want them to give up that money because then their salaries are going to go down. So I think what you'll see is, you know, just a lot more of that. And I don't know about the matchup thing. That doesn't sound very exciting to me either. So, you know, hopefully.
Oh, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's just where I see it headed.
Yeah. I was just talking to Johnny Gomes a few days ago. He's going to do this home run derby thing for MLB. And what he was saying was the way they're going to do it is they're not even going to do it on baseball fields. So they're basically just going to have from like second base to like shortstop and just go out to a fence there. So you won't be able to like pull the ball, but they're going to have this home run derby where they can do it basically anywhere and make it like a traveling show type thing. So that's obviously different. That's something they're trying to do different to bring more recognition to the sport. So I'd like to see more things like that. And I think that's where things are headed. But, you know, if in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, the game doesn't look anything like itself, I don't think that's a good thing either.
Well, there are definitely going to be some interesting things in baseball to watch over the next few years, including maybe the return of Joe Beimel to a major league mound. Joe Beimel, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
Where can we learn more about you and learn more about this place?
Well, my Instagram is my name. I don't even know what it is, to be honest. I think if you type in my name, it comes up. We have a website. It's BeimelEliteAthletics.com. There's not a whole lot on it yet. We've had the same website for like years and we haven't done a lot with it, but we're working on it as we speak. And then, you know, just coming into the gym. You know, this is where I love to be and I love to train our athletes. So it's always nice to have the guys come in that want to be here and want to learn.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you for turning in, and we will see you next time on the Cannon Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Instagram at Cannon Sports, TikTok at Cannon Sports Official, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs.